Remember, hey John. No, she called me because they had 4 bills. We pushed 2 out, and we were hoping we were doing 2 later. Right. Yeah, I do have a memory. Just slow.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back for our voting session. We're going to start with Senator Eckert's Bill 92, Preceptor. She's got 2 preceptor bills. There's an amendment.
Yes. Let me go ahead and share my. So Senate Bill 92 is similar to Bill you had last year. It's kind of there's Senate Bill 92 and 102 have a little bit of overlap, but Senate Bill 92 repeals the sunset termination for the physician and nurse practitioner preceptor income tax credits. And we do have some amendments from the sponsor that, let me see if I can do a screen share and pull that up.
Oh, shoot.
There are 2 that we have the amendments in the bill. Am I on?
You can start talking if you like when you start explaining what's going on.
Sorry about that.
Oh, he's got it now.
Okay.
So the amendments, basically the main change, you'll see right here, is just the Department of Health asked for some clarification on what the clinician rotation would actually be. So instead of it being for each student, it's for each rotation based on the minimum number of hours. The bill also alters for the physician program the number of hours for rotation from 160 to 100. The amendments also, the department had noted a request to change the reporting date from January 31 to April 15th. The department's required to report to the comptroller on the credits issued in the prior taxable year. But I've spoken with Senator Eckert, and she's requested to withdraw that piece of the amendment. So this would be coming out. The reason being is that the January 31 date is so that the comptroller has the information in time for the filing season. April 15th would be too late for them to be able to use that information to check against returns that were being filed.
That's correct.
And so you have the same changes for this bill is the physician and the nurse practitioner programs.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Senator. So my recollection is that last year the issue was making sure that the organizations came up with some funding on both of these. Is that right?
Correct.
And that got accomplished?
They're 2 separate bills. So the one bill makes the technical corrections to the existing program, and then the other bill talks about the addition of physicians' assistants. They came up with the fund. They were able to work it out with the Board of Physicians, and everybody's okay with that on that second bill. That is Senate Bill 102. What we're on right now was Senate Bill 92, and there were 2 amendments to that, adjusting the hours, and that's fine, but the date that the department requested, because people weren't taking advantage of the credit and they thought it was because of the time when they had to file it, we tried to move that up to April 15th, but that coincides with the comptroller's busy season, so they need that data before January, so we told the department they're going to have to do that. Right, Philip?
Yeah, the January 31 date is existing law. Right. The amendments that were submitted, we're going to change that, but my understanding is Senator Eckert is said to withdraw that piece of the amendment so that the reporting date remains January 31, so that the information is provided to the comptroller.
Yep.
So they have it in time for the filing season.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the amendments would just be changing the terminology about the what counts as a rotation for the tax credit.
Is there a motion for the amendment? All those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous. On the bill?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous. Okay. 102.
Senate Bill 102 is, the Senator Eckert mentioned, this is a companion bill. This is essentially the bill that came out of B&T in the Senate last year and then ran out of time over in the House. This is a bill that establishes the same preceptor program but for physician's assistants. So it's going to be all new language, but it tracks with the other two programs. And then the one additional piece in this one, as Senator Eckert mentioned, is that it's establishing a $15 fee for physician assistant licenses that would be then used to as the funding source for the tax credits. Same amendments as the other bill, changing the what's considered a rotation rather than per student. And then these did also include the date change, but consistent with the action in the other bill, Senator Eckert requested to leave it at January 31st.
Move the amendments. All those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous. All those in favor? Unanimous again. Very good. Now you can go to your bill hearing.
Mr. Chairman, if you have any other specialties who want on board, they've got to bring their money.
Right. You know what? I think you did a tremendous job with this. Finding a source for this, and I mean, it certainly makes it easy to vote for. So thank you. Good job.
Thank you. And it was a different way to what I consider grow your own, that it provides an opportunity for the profession or the specialty to make an investment in growing their own, and making sure that profession grows and they have skin in the game, I would say. I had hoped to get a couple of years of track record on this, of experience, so that then more people would want to get on board, but we already have a line forming, so I think it was a good thing to move forward. Thank you. Thank you for your help in the committee.
Senate Bill 2, Senator McCray. So we've got this bill, and we've got the governor's bill, which is the last one on the page. And my understanding, Senator, and we'll get a better description, but in general, what I understand is that you've taken some things from the governor's bill that you like, and you've got them as an amendment.
Yes, sir. This was a good partnership between the executive office, the MES director currently, and the House, just to work in all of the amendments that was up to par.
Okay. So, Matt, you want to explain the situation?
Sure. We've got Senate Bill 2 here, and Senator McCray brought forward some amendments to it. So I'm going to walk you through Senate Bill 2 and or the concepts of Senate Bill 2 and the amendments that Senator McCray has. I've tried to break it into chunks since the bill is rather a long bill, and the amendments don't necessarily follow along in the bill because of the way the bill's all encompassing here. So basically, Senate Bill 2, as it came in, removed from the MES board the director, the deputy director, the secretary, and the treasurer, and added the state treasurer to the board of directors. The secretary and treasurer of the board would be selected from among the members of the board, so they wouldn't be appointed by the director anymore, and compensation would be determined by the board. The amendments that Senator McCray brought forward renames the director of MES to be the executive director and makes that position a non-voting position of the board of directors. The amendments, which this isn't in your reprint, but it was intended to be, It would allow the state treasurer to designate somebody to sit on the board in the state treasurer's place. So it would say state treasurer or the state treasurer's designee. It would require expenses of the executive director to be presented to the MES board. And the board would also have to annually evaluate the executive director. The board is required to adopt a conflict of interest policy. And then it creates a 5-year assessment of the board's operations by an independent body to look at how the board is operating, and basically a 5-year review. It adds in a standard of care that's required under the corporations article for the board, and I'm told that that standard of care is the same that applies to other governing boards for other entities in the state. And then it creates there's no severance package. I know that's been an issue with the board for a situation where somebody leaves to go pursue another position in state government. So those were the provisions that dealt with the board. The next section deals with procurement and spending restrictions. BPW is going to be, generally BPW oversees state procurement on contracts that are over $200,000. MES is exempt from that provision. The bill as it came in requires BPW to approve contracts that are valued more than $250,000, and that was as the bill came in. It also requires that the MES board approve any expenditures of the service that are over $25,000. The amendments that Senator McCray brought forward would increase the amount that the amount of an expenditure that the board had to review to $200,000. But then the amendment, the MES will still have to notify the board if the expenditure is at $25,000. So they just have to approve at $200,000, but will be notified at anything anything above $25,000. So the next provision, and this was in the bill as it came in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Matt, one of the things to also mention is the emergency. So if it's an emergency, they can already go ahead and do it. I know that was a big issue for folks, that if an emergency situation, they didn't have to get the board's approval under certain circumstances, which is defined.
Right. That's in the amendment too, that,
Yes,
that there's a requirement for approval if there's an emergency situation. The bill includes a requirement that the new director or executive director now is going to have to appoint a diversity officer, and then spells out the requirements for the diversity officer. The amendment adds in some requirements with regard to MES's budget. DBM is now going to be able to require that MES submit the budget in the form that DBM wants it submitted in. And then there's also a requirement that open positions are going to be required to be advertised and then handled with a competitive interview process. There's a requirement that the board's going to have to update all of its policies, and it specifies policies governing severance packages, bonuses, tuition and expense reimbursements, workforce diversity, whistleblower complaints, travel, and the list went on. The General Assembly is going to get a chance to review those new policies because the reports are going to be submitted to the General Assembly. And then there were collective bargaining issues. There's a provision in the bill as it came in to explicitly add MES employees to the list of employees to whom the state's collective bargaining provisions apply, and states that MES employees may enter into binding collective bargaining agreements in accordance with applicable state law. There were some provisions in the amendment that I think flesh out what's intended here, and it authorizes the State Labor Relations Board to designate bargaining units for the MES employees. The bill as it came in has some new requirements regarding transparency of the board, so that board meetings are going to be streamed and other transparency issues. And then the last big issue was the hiring of counsel. Under current law, the Attorney General provides an advisor to the Environmental Service and its board, and then with the approval of the AG's office, MES can hire additional counsel. MES is going to be required to obtain the the approval of the board before hiring additional counsel. So the service had been able to hire additional attorneys if they got the approval of the Attorney General. Now that's going to have to go in front of the board for approval before they do that. And lastly, the bill is going to be emergency, so it'll take effect immediately.
So is the emergency component, were you integrating amendments as you were going along?
Yeah, they're all over the place in the
Right,
bill.
right. Gotcha. Okay. Is there a motion on the amendments? Got a question first. Senator Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we went through this, I brought up about the board. I don't see any changes in there, but I thought there ought to be at least some representatives from the Eastern Shore of Western Maryland on this board, because it's a statewide board and they do a lot for the rural parts of the state. I don't see anything in here in these amendments dealing with that particular thing.
What page you looking on? What page you on, Senator?
Well, I can't find it in the membership here anywhere.
Page
where it
6.
Stipulates.
Page 6. So how many members are we at?
We are going from. We're going to go to 8. So you're going down a member from 9.
Yes, sir. Senator.
First, I want to apologize to the good senator from Washington. He brought this up as an issue during the hearing, in reference to his questions. And all he was doing was asking for geographic diversity with the 6, even I guess the public sector employees that would be appointed, or the private sector employees. And I think that it's actually a friendly amendment. It slipped past me trying to get to everybody else's stuff too. So
what are you proposing it reads as?
that when the governor's, one of them, so you have 3 public sector that the governor's going to be able to choose from. Then you have 2 private sector that the governor is going to be able to choose from. Then you have a list that MACO and MML have to work together to give to the governor for that to be choose from. He's just asking for, out of those 6 people that's going to be appointed, that we consider geographic diversity with those appointments.
Is that enough people?
Excuse me?
Is that enough people?
It's all a matter of your perspective, I guess.
I think that as long as it's language that says that you give strong consideration to geographic diversity.
Senator Edwards, what do you think?
I think it ought to be stronger than that. We have that written in a lot of things. I think it ought to state in here, at least one of the governor's appointments must come from a rural part of the state, as rural is designated in state law, which is
That sounds good.
17 or 18 counties, even parts of Baltimore and parts of Montgomery fit in what's classified as rural.
Yep, that sounds fine. You got that, Matt?
Yep.
I agree, I'm good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to echo that because
I got to turn somebody off. Many of our wastewater treatment plants are managed by this organization. I think it's very important that we have representation on that group. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and
Sure.
sponsor the bill. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. All right, so a motion,
I had just one comment, just sort of the committees. We took up every one of the governor's amendments except for one, which was that the DVM go on the board. We just thought with the 3 public, 3 private, that the governor's already choosing those folks. So just as an FYI, that we did take up every amendment that the governor offered except for that one.
okay?
Just in case.
Thank you.
Very good. Looking for a motion on the amendments as adjusted. All those in favor, raise your hand on the amendments. Okay, unanimous. On the bill as amended.
second,
All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay.
I had to put that one down.
All right, next up, Senate Bill 172, Around Health Equity Resources Act. I know we have some people that we're going to allow to come in on this.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think the
Why don't you quickly go
backup has been
through?
amended.
We've got Mr. Luckner and Mr. DeMarco, and looks like Michelle Spencer. Senate Bill 172, Around Health Equity Resources Act. I know we have some people that we're going to allow to come in on this. Looks like they're getting delayed.
That's because they've got it on, they probably have YouTube on, or they're watching it.
Hey, you got to turn off your YouTubes,
Or
everybody.
whatever they're watching, yeah.
Okay. Marco, and sounds like somebody's still got a YouTube on.
No?
Everybody got that all settled out? Thank you. All right, Philip, you want to tell us a little bit about this bill?
Yeah, so I don't know if you want me to kind of walk through the bill or just give like a general overview first.
Should give us a general overview.
Okay, so basically the bill would set up a health equity resource communities program. It's very similar to the health enterprise zone program that was in effect a few years ago. And the idea would be to allow for the creation of health equity resource communities that would consist of contiguous geographic areas and would have the purpose of addressing measurable and documented health disparities and health outcomes, and to provide.
Are those already specified in the bill, or are those already specified in the bill, or do they have to come up with them?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Are those geographic areas already specified, or do they have to come up with them?
No, there would be eligible sponsoring entities would apply to establish the community, and then the Department of Health Secretary would approve those.
Okay, you can keep going.
So the communities would be established, designation would be established for a period of 5 years, would be able to be renewed. There would be, there's an advisory committee with appointments by the governor, president of the Senate, speaker of the House. I think it totals about 24 or so people. The program would provide funding through grants and other tax incentives for services in the enterprise communities for providing services to address those health disparities, including tax incentives for tax credits for licensed healthcare professionals and other support professionals working in those communities. The main, I think, aspect of for B&T is there's a community reserve fund that's established with being funded through a increased tax, sales tax on alcohol that would be dedicated to fund the program. And then there's also earmarks for behavioral health services in the program.
So is that the $14 million? Is that from the fiscal note because of the generation expected from the specific increase in the alcohol tax, or was it specified for programmatic areas?
That, I believe, is related to the alcohol tax. It'd be a little bit more than 14 million. It would, the special fund revenue based on that 1% increase. The note's scoring a little bit above 30, between 30 and 40 million per year, depending on the year. That also, as introduced, that also had a phase-in component.
Okay.
But yeah, the 14 million was kind of earmarked in the Relief Act, as you all may recall, for funding to the CHRC, I think in contemplation of working as kind of a bridge to the program contemplated under this bill.
Okay. People have questions about this. Yes, Senator Roosevelt.
Back to your question about the designated, the geographic areas. Are there any criteria or any limits, or how is it supposed to be decided?
Let me share a copy of the bill. So this language here in the bill, establishing the criteria for the areas. So contiguous geographic area, demonstrating health disparities and poor health outcomes, small enough for the incentives offered to have an impact on improving those disparities, designated by a secretary, and then there's a requirement for minimum population of 5,000 residents.
So basically, I mean, I can't read it on there, I can't find it here. Basically, it gives them the authority to choose as big an area as they want to, and to, as big or small an area as they want to, and to basically use their own criteria as to why they choose one rather than another. Is that the way to understand that?
I believe so. I don't know if any of the people on would want to comment on that as far as the intent. I don't know if Vinny or Michelle, you wanted to speak to that?
Sure, but can you just repeat the question? I'm having a hard time hearing.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'll get closer. My question is, does the language of the bill basically allow as big or small an area as they decide? And does it allow basically use of whatever criteria they decide?
Sure, so thank you for the question. If I heard correctly, the question relates to the criteria for the number of individuals who would be within the population. And so in the past, what we have done was use maps, thinking specifically about contiguous geographic areas, thinking specifically about zip codes, and using zip codes, contiguous zip codes, to be able to measure what the impact of funding for a specific area over a specific period of time. The total population, or the population limit of 5,000, was established because we believe that number is a good indicator of population impact based on incentives that would be given or incentives that would be available within a specific geographic area, as well as thinking about what those specific health disparities are, how we can reduce those health disparities, and what are measurable in terms of chronic diseases, including cardiovascular, asthma, and the such.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm having trouble hearing her as well. Maybe she's also going to tell me. The 5,000, how does the 5,000 number work?
Philip, can you repeat?
So the question is, how does the 5,000 number work?
Oh, thank you. How did the 5,000? Thank you. The 5,000 was established. We used epi data to determine, really thinking about what is the level of a population that we could have significant impact, and 5,000 as a baseline. So that could be much more than 5,000, but no less than 5,000. And thinking about how we can really measure impact. And looking at a 5,000 baseline population to be able to determine that.
So it's a minimum. The 5,000 is a minimum.
Yes, the 5,000 is a minimum.
And no maximum.
And no
maximum.
No maximum. That is correct. I'm so sorry that
that's okay. No, this is
maximum.
hard. I appreciate it. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Eckert.
Thank you very much. I've seen a lot of these initiatives come and go in the past 35 years. And I'd just like to remind the body, there are a couple of things. First of all, in law, we have something called the LHIPs, the Local Health Improvement Planning Bodies. I know on our Eastern Shore, it's comprised of the Upper Shore counties, and then we have Lower Shore counties who do this. In addition to this, when we move from hospital care to total population health, and I spent years in health planning, so that's why I'm coming with this information. One of the things that happened was the hospital systems were charged with developing, in conjunction with the community members, the health plan for the area, which encompasses a lot of the items that are included in this initiative as well. And I would just suggest that, out of that in our area is where we then went to designate our health enterprise zones, because we know, where the high numbers of uninsured are, and then where the pockets of chronic disease exist to be able to begin to address this need. So I'm just saying that I know on the shore, and then we had the Rural Health Planning Initiative a number of years ago. So from my perspective, we have a number of these measures or activities in play, and I'm just curious how this new initiative then fits in with what we already have prescribed in law, or whether it is creating another entity in addition to that I think at a time for many of our health departments and federally qualified health centers and community partners may be a little much. I know it's a good initiative, but it looks so familiar to many other things. So I'm just wondering how this would fit into the existing structures already established by law. Thank you.
That's a good question.
Senator, I'd have to double check. I think there was testimony from someone asking that the LHICs be eligible to participate in this. And then there was also I received some information about clarifying the role of FQHCs in this process. So I think and other people chime in, I think it would be within the scope of the legislation if those LHIC areas wanted to be included in the program, I guess, as long as they fit the definition for the resource community.
And just to add on, that is correct. And in the previous HEZ legislation, Caroline and Dorchester counties, the health departments there, as well as those LHICs, were part of the HEZ initiative and were very influential in terms of reducing some of the rates specific to asthma in those areas as well. And so there is no reason why the LHICs could not be applicants for this specific initiative. Thank you.
And Senator, let me add that this is Vinnie DeMarco with Citizens Health Initiative. The HEZ on Eastern Shore and the other 4 around the state were doing a great job, as Michelle so eloquently testified at the hearing. And the problem was that it went away, and the funding for a lot of the programs on the Eastern Shore and elsewhere ended. And we're hoping with the Health Equity Resource Communities Act to make the support permanent.
Yeah. Can I respond? Thank you very much. That is true, but we've had, since that time, we've had a lot of our hospital partners and other organizations step up to the plate to be able to not recreate the HEZ, but to make sure that we have additional resources in all of our local, I'm going to call them villages, to be able to improve access to care. And I think through the pandemic, we've learned more about that and have been very active in making sure those folks of high risk are able to get their vaccine. So that's been one of the things I've been dealing with. But I understand what you're saying, but I'm just saying part of the HEZ and the monies that came from the Community Health Resources Commission, where even though that program did go away, it did not continue in that same form, but elements of it were picked up and continued. We also have an area health education center that becomes a focal point as well for another number of these initiatives, and I think we have several going on right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So that actually leads me to, I believe, what might be one of the bigger fundamental questions for us as a committee, and how money is being spent and directed. So we did make that commitment in the relief bill for $14 million. In part, it was a mechanism for us to get money quickly to this project. And presumably, theoretically, it may be used in 21, certainly in 22. Outside of doing a direct revenue increase somewhere, we couldn't bring that money in immediately. So the first opportunity for us to create a mandate would be 23. But that then sets up a situation where we've got Mr. Luckman's group with access to this $14 million to accomplish something in the next year and a half to get things moving. And then we've got within the bill this advisory group. I don't remember the name of it exactly. Did I hear 24 members? Was that this bill?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got this advisory group, and I'm trying to understand how we're going to put this together in as seamless a way possible to ensure we get the most bang for our buck and the best programming for our citizens. So, if maybe Mr. Luckner, anyone, actually the whole panel, if you could address that question, how you see this flowing for the next couple of years.
So, Senator, I'll defer to Mark. I would point out that CHRC is not referenced in the bill in its current form. So,
well, I understand, but they have $14 million in their hands right now.
So, Phil, Mr. Chairman, thanks for that. This is Mark Luckner from the Community Health Resource Commission. I'm more comfortable commenting on the language that your committee added to 496, which I have before me. And so since the budget amendment was approved, and I've seen from the State Health Department that the $14 million has been put into the Community Health Resource Commission account, we've been talking about how we could do what you just said, Mr. Chairman, to distribute the funding expeditiously and strategically as quickly as possible, while also managing those funds, which is what I think the hallmark of the Community Health Resource Commission is, which is to distribute public resources efficiently, strategically, and to manage them since they're public resources. So we're preparing to expend the $14 million in accordance with the language of 496. And as Philip pointed out, 172, which is on his screen right now, does not mention the Community Health Resource Commission.
Well, I'm sorry, 496 did track this language that's in 172.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. DeMarco. I just want to first really thank the committee and the legislature for doing that, putting forth these $14 million. And we're thrilled that the commission is going to be doing something right away with that. That is really, really terrific. The purpose of Senate Bill 172, as you said, is to go beyond what the commission is going to do right away to help people with those resources, to create a long-term way to handle this. there's some interest, I know, in the House of Delegates in phasing that in and starting the health equity resource communities later after the commission has spent these resources. And I know that that is being considered in the HGO committee, and they're working on a redraft that would do that. We, of course, would like this to start as soon as possible. And you have set up a way to do that, and we would have no objection to figuring out a way to create the broader program, have that start later. But as you pointed out, one of the important questions is how the funding is there for the long term, so that we don't happen what happened in 2012, 2016, where it phased out. That's very, very important. And we have proposed a 1 cent alcohol tax increase, but if you have other ways to do that, that would be great to really make sure there's permanent funding for this program.
Senator.
My question is, were you asking what should be the source of funding, or were you asking who should administer the program, or something else that I didn't quite get?
No, I mean, we'll figure out the source of the funding.
Okay.
I'm not worried about that per se. Okay. I mean, it's clearly not going to be the alcohol tax,
right.
At least from my perspective. To me, it's really about the fact that they have very specific ideas in this bill, how to move forward. They've outlined how they're going to do it. They've got this commission that wants to set up these areas, 5,000 people or more, all of those components. We, in an effort to get moving with money, as
right.
you know, and the speed in which we've done everything, realize the importance of this legislation, the desire to move forward with this as quickly as possible. As you can see, took this language, these couple lines.
Right.
These couple lines do not reflect everything that there is.
Yeah, in the bill.
And so the question that I was trying to get at is, there's this $14 million. It's in the hands of Mr. Luckner's group. Presumably, in 23, there'll be more dollars that will extend out into the future by a mandate.
Yep.
But how does it move from these couple of lines to still be useful to, is there enough language and ability to sort of seamlessly do everything they want to do? In other words, I don't want to have this $14 million spent on something, whatever that is, which might be completely legitimate based on these couple of points here.
But not in sync with the long-term strategy.
Correct.
Okay, now I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Senator Griffith will speak.
Senator Griffith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a little follow-up to Senator Eckert's comment, and I believe the intent, I know the intent of the bill, which is to create a long-term program. I actually worked for a federally qualified health center during the HEZ program of last and really saw some measurable outcomes. It was implemented through CHRC. One of the challenges, though, for that was that it took resources off the table for some other programming, and so I, for one, was really excited to see this injection. I guess my question for Vinnie or Mark or whoever is, in the infrastructure that you have in the bill, it looks like you're establishing a long-term group, advisory group, to implement solutions to address health disparities into the foreseeable future or even beyond. I guess my question is, could CHRC be a part of that group even during these years? Maybe that there would be planning or building years for the long-term program, and that the group could quickly, convene and start working on the strategy, because even if the bill is introduced were to have passed, there's that time that happens where individuals are identified from different entities and all of that. So could that happen?
Well, Senator, this is Vinnie DeMarco. I just want to say that we're big fans of the commission, and we certainly have no objection at all and encourage the commission to be part of this process. And in fact, there's an amendment that was proposed to make sure a commission member is on the advisory council. We love that amendment. That'd be great. And I think that because of what you did in the relief fund, the commission now has $14 million, which we hope will be used to kind of help people right away, but also lay the groundwork for the health equity resource communities when they start to be created. So if you decide to go the direction that the House seems to want to go, to delay the creation of the advisory council and the creation of the full health equity resource commissions for a little bit, in the meantime, I think the commission is the right place to be starting to figure some of those things out about how what could be done with this money. But we also think that there should be some discussion of how to create the long-term funding mechanism, and maybe some other entity could be working on that in the meantime. But I think a critical decision for you all is, do you want to delay the full health equity resource communities for a while, and or start that sooner? And if there's a delay, what is the role of the commission? And we have some ideas which we've been sharing with the House, which we shared the memo with your committee that I said to Philip on how to do that. But I just want to say I'm so thrilled to hear the enthusiasm in this committee for doing this and doing something about health equity. And to answer your question, yes, we'd love the commission to be involved in making the long-term process work.
Maybe I might just expand on those comments. So, Madam President Pro Tem, thank you for that, Senator Griffith. When the language of Senate Bill 172 became public, my 11 commissioners, most of them contacted me directly and expressed their support for this statement about the need to prioritize health equity. So I just was, sitting at my little office here, reading grantee reports, and my commissioner started contacting me and said, we need to be part of this. This is very important work, the health equity perspective. And so based on that, I placed a call to the sponsor, and he expressed support for our commission to be added to the advisory committee. And then we read the language of 496, which we just said earlier, took $14 million and asked us to distribute that for these purposes that Philip has on the screen. So to answer your question, I could see a scenario whereby the $14 million is distributed out into the community in an organized, efficient, strategic way. And I'll say, just for perspective, we did an RFP earlier this year after we're all dealing with the pandemic. It was our first ever emergency funding RFP. And we worked closely with our colleagues at the State Health Department, who gave us funding provided by the feds. And we distributed $1.5 million to 46 grantees to help them with their COVID-related expenses, PPE, telehealth, and so forth. And that whole process from beginning to end took 2 months. 2 months to get that money out the door. And we continue to manage it. And as we all know, those federal funds had to be expended by December 30th. So I just wanted to add that perspective that we at the commission are prepared, if we're being asked to do so, to distribute this $14 million in accordance with the language you see here on Philip's screen, to help promote health equity, to support vulnerable populations that we know are hurting in a real way right now, and to help promote ongoing COVID relief and recovery. And that may help lay the groundwork for a future longer-term initiative that you see envisioned in 172. That's how I would see it.
We would agree with that completely, and I think it's important that Senate Bill 172 connect to the 496 language for the commission and somehow make it part of one whole to achieve the health equity goals we all have.
And that's kind of what I was getting at, that connection. So it does move from one to the next. I love to hear Mr. Luckner talking about how he saw the efficient use of the funds, but that connection, I think, is the part that I'm most curious about. Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm a big supporter of the whole idea of this health equity, but I'm listening to this bill, and I haven't spent any time on it before this, but it sure doesn't seem to me like it's ready for prime time. It just seems like there's a lot of questions and a lot more work that needs to be done on it. Just my 2 cents.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry, I could not hear that. I'm sorry.
Senator King was concerned about some of the aspects of this. We're second. We're second. Are we second or first? We're not second. First on this one. We are first on this.
B&T's primary.
And who's second? Finance.
Yep.
Finance.
Okay. My guess is, and I may be wrong, Senator. Do you think that the questions that you're relating to me, or you just were referring to, were more related to policy issues that finance might also be looking at?
Most probably, yes.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions on this right now? Do we have the list of amendments that have been suggested over on the House side?
I don't think a reprint has been done yet for what the House is working on. I can check with staff to get that when that's ready.
Okay.
There were amendments proposed in the testimony, and then Mr. DeMarco had sent some conceptual amendments along to me, and then I'd also received something about clarifying the role of FQHCs.
Okay. So the next time we have a work session, we'll go through all those amendments. And for those of you who want to dig into it, this would be the time to dig in and see if you have your own amendments. Okay? Thank you all very much. We're going to move on to the next bill.
Thank you.
186, job creation tax credit for hiring veterans.
Yep.
Administration.
Senate Bill 186 kind of deals with two different credits. One is a tax credit. It's called Hire Our Veterans Tax Credit that was created in 2017. And then the existing job creation tax credit that's existed for many, many years. So this bill essentially does two things. One, it moves the Hiring Our Veterans, all the criteria and eligibility from a standalone program into the existing job creation tax credit program, and then repeals the standalone bill. Everything remains the same. They just copied it into the job creation tax credit program, except they are proposing to increase the value of the tax credit for hiring a veteran from approximately $1,800 to $2,500. So they're enhancing that existing program. Then in addition to that, within the longstanding existing hiring job creation tax credit, they are adding two provisions that would extend. Right now, that program has a credit worth $3,000 or $5,000, depending on where the business is located. And this bill adds $1,000 to both of those values if a veteran is hired by those companies in those areas. Also, what the bill does is it extends the job creation tax credit by an additional 5 years. What is not changing is the total cap of $4 million on the program and the total cap of $1 million for any particular business entity. So that is essentially the bill, Mr. Chairman.
So at the end of the day, I'm looking at the fiscal note, you're saying it's just because of the extension, the $4 million was always there, so that doesn't change. All we're doing is the request is to extend this starting in 22, with the 22 budget.
Correct. So it carries the same fiscal cost that it's had up till now forward another few years. And I do have one technical amendment to go over when you're ready for that.
Okay, Senator Young has a question. Senator Young.
I might be misreading this, but it seems the idea is to extend credits to hire veterans. But at the bottom of page 7, it says that they can't claim this for more than 5 qualified veteran employees in a credit year. But it appears in the upper part, you can claim all the unqualified people. There's no, I don't see a cap on that.
Yeah, so that gets a little bit, so the cap of the 5 qualified veterans for these small businesses came directly from the Hire Our Veterans bill. So that's consistent from what's been in existence since 2017. These other businesses that are up on, still on page 7, basically lines 9 through 16 for other, the existing job creation tax credit, in order to get those, the businesses have to actually expand. Whereas for the small businesses with the veterans, there is no requirement to expand. So it's a simpler way, if you're a small business hiring veterans, it's a simpler eligibility criteria to be able to take the credit. What you're referring to is the existing law, and I think because the idea there is that you have to actually be adding jobs to the economy, that might be the intent as to why there's no cap on the current program, except for the total $4 million, cap, as well as the cap. So the $4 million applies to the program as a whole. The existing law does have a $1 million cap for any single business. So in essence, that creates a cap on how many employees would qualify.
So this little section stands alone from all the rest of the bill. It doesn't relate to how many employees have to be hired new. This is just totally... For small businesses, yes. For small businesses who hire veterans, that does not have a requirement to add more people. It just has a requirement to, and that's on page, if you move to page 6, lines 9 and 10, to be qualified, a small business just needs to hire at least one full-time position in the state. Okay. I don't see a separate definition for a small business. The one I read earlier is quite a few employees.
A small business is defined at the bottom of page 3 and onto the top of page 4. And this is identical definition. Basically, it's 50 or fewer employees. And that's the same definition that has existed in the Hire Our Veterans Tax Credit Bill from 2017.
Okay. It's just confusing because it seems to mix two things. That defines it there, but then you go to the next page and it starts talking about 60 qualified, creating 60 qualified new positions.
Yeah, that's for... I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. You faded out.
No, I just am not reading any break when you're changing from one to the other, but if that's clear legally.
Yeah, and I think that's where, by moving the Hire Our Veterans into this existing one, you're going to get a little bit of that kind of bifurcation within the statute of, for this pot, we have this going on, but for this other, we have these other criteria going on. So it is a little hard to kind of parse your way through it. Those more complicated requirements of increasing the number of jobs and being a new company don't apply to this particular small business who hire veterans part of it, because it didn't apply in the original Hire Our Veterans tax credit from 2017.
I'll accept that. I just think it should be a little clearer, because when you read this, it's jumping back and forth, and it's easy to read one into the other. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there any questions about this bill? Is there a motion? All right. All those in favor of 186, raise your hand. Unanimous.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I need to explain the amendment.
I didn't see amendment next to it on here.
Yes, it's a very small amendment.
No.
So on page 6, and I believe you have the reprint in front of you, but it's so small I can just verbally explain it. On page 6 in line 9, right now they're saying that small business shall hire in the credit year at least one qualified veteran. This amendment would strike in the credit year because that caused a conflict with the later provision that was not intended by the department. And so working with the department, this was their solution was to strike that.
Everybody good with that? All those in favor of that amendment, raise your hand. Okay.
Second.
Yeah, we kind of did already, but well, yeah, sure.
Okay, keep moving.
We'll keep moving on, yep. No objection, very good. All right. 314.
Senate Bill 314 is the Board of Revenue Estimates and Bureau of Revenue Estimates Organization and Operations Bill. The bill reorganizes the Bureau within the Comptroller's Office and alters the operations of the Board of Revenue Estimates and the Bureau. And so, more specifically, the bill requires the consensus. Senator McCray brought forward some amendments that I'm going to work through into the bill as we go along here. The bill requires the Consensus Revenue Monitoring and Forecasting Group to review and evaluate the candidates for Chief of Bureau of Revenue Estimates prior to the Comptroller appointing one. They have to review at least 3 candidates. One of the amendments that Senator McCray brought forward would add the Revenue Monitoring Committee to the group that would review the candidates. Next, the bill creates new reporting requirements. So every 4 years, there's going to be a review of the strength and weaknesses of the Bureau of Revenue Estimates, and then DLS is going to do a review of the operations of the Bureau of Revenue Estimates. The Board of Revenue Estimates is also going to, or the Board of Revenue Estimates is going to be required to post the March, December, and September meeting date by July 31st of each year, so that you'll know when the new estimates are going to come out and when those meetings are going to take place. The Bureau is required to submit its March report by a date that allows the Board of Revenue Estimates to meet before the passage of the annual budget in the first chamber of the General Assembly. So that'll require that the March forecast come out before the first chamber has to act on the budget. And one of the amendments requires the Revenue Monitoring Committee to review the estimates before they're adopted by the Bureau. The bill requires the Board of Revenue Estimates to create a website and make a lot of its work public through that website, and so to add a level of transparency. One of the issues that I think Senator McCray worked out is in the bill, it created a chief position within the executive pay plan. The amendments that Senator McCray brought forward strike the creation of that position within the executive pay plan and the creation of the deputy chief within the executive pay plan, and just create the positions so that they exist. I think that's in line with how DBM handles other agency positions. So where they fall in the classification of the pay plan will be between the agency and DBM to figure out. So this just leaves in place that the Bureau is going to have 6 analysts and 1 deputy chief. And so that's SB 314 with Senator McCray's amendments.
Motion for favorable, so second?
Second.
All those in favor? Everyone in favor? Unanimous? Okay. Oh, you're going to take the... Senator Zucker takes the rule. Taking the rule. No, that was the amendments now on the bill.
Second.
All those in favor? With Senator Zucker taking the roll again. Did someone say something? Oh, yeah, Senator Alpert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to commend the sponsor of the bill. This is I think one of our most essential state employees and agencies we're talking about right here. It's also very important to me representing a municipality that doesn't have the capacity to do what this board and bureau does. And so I've spoken with the current director. He's committed with this bill and extra resources, they can better support our municipalities and smaller counties and their revenue projections, which right now couldn't be more essential. So I've spoken with the sponsor. If I could be asked to be added on as a co-sponsor, I would greatly appreciate that, Matt. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Would you like to be added on a co-sponsor? Does anybody else want to be added on? Okay.
I'm for it, but that's not.
223, Capital Arts Grant.
All right, Mr. Chairman, you guys have a reprint of this on your desk as well. For a little bit of a context, but it's not identical anymore. This is the same bill that passed last year unanimously. However, this year there are a couple of amendments for your consideration. Essentially what this bill does is it sets up a new program called the Maryland Arts Capital Grant Program with a requirement of $3 million from fiscal year 23 through 28. And here it would give grants to organizations that have an operating budget of less than $3 million and participates in like their current grant program. The first amendment takes place here, which is on page 2 of your reprint in front of you. A situation was brought to light where certain organizations who maybe weren't eligible under their existing grant programs were also not eligible under this new program. What this amendment does is it creates a second pathway to be eligible for this $3 million grant program by requiring that the organization is open to the public and provides cultural education or experiences. The next amendment is about the use of the grant funds. Initially, the bill came in just saying major repairs to a facility. This is page 2, lines 20. Under the proposed amendments, it would say, or other infrastructure. So just broadening the uses, but still by the organization. Any single grant cannot exceed $1 million. There is a 25% match requirement for the organization. The grants would be provided in a competitive application process, which brings us to page 3 of the reprint where there's another amendment. This would require that in that application, lines 2 through 11 shows the contents of the application. This amendment would require a letter of support from the senator or the delegate representing the area. Finally, the department has to establish a quantitative system to evaluate the applications, and then they would make the grants after that process. So, Mr. Chairman, that is the bill with the amendments that are brought to my attention. Also, at the very top, I believe during the hearing, I made a note to myself that Senator Griffith had asked to be added as a sponsor to this bill, so this amendment does that as well.
Senator Peters, were you? I can't
yeah, I
barely
have
see
a couple
you.
questions for Erica.
Yeah, please.
So, Erica, on page 2, line 9, it says, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
It says that the governor shall include in the state operating or capital an annual appropriation of $3 million. So is it $3 million for both? Is it 1.5? Does it depend on the mix? How does that
No. Work? Yeah, so this gets at, I believe the intent is that these would be covered in the capital budget, but it can be either or, and we are prevented from doing a mandate for the capital budget. It's ineffective.
Okay.
So basically, this gives the governor an option to put it in either or.
Okay.
And which would then flow to you guys when you get the bill to make changes to that, similar to some of the other programs that we can switch between operating or capital.
Okay, and would you mind just on page 4, line 8, just walk me through how the LBIs are tied into this with the intent language?
Yep, sure. The intent basically is that organizations apply to this program first.
Okay.
And so that's pretty much what all those words boil down to, is that they apply for this grant first.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Where was that? What line was that?
Page 4, basically subsection H, so lines 8 through 20.
So they apply for this, and if they don't get it, they go for an LBI. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Senator Young.
On page 2, line 3 at the end, or other infrastructure, that's pretty ambiguous. What does that mean?
I think this is trying to get at, maybe the sponsor of the amendment can speak up as well. I think it might have been Senator Elfreth, but I'm not sure. I think it's getting at, when you think of a facility, you often think of a building versus an infrastructure. Maybe there's parking lot needs, maybe there's, piping needs underground, things like that. So I think it's just getting at broadening, whatever the kind of the cap.
So you could pave the parking lot or build a shed or...
Senator Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Senator Young. Yes, the intention here is it would still have to have the 15-year lifespan if it's in the capital. Obviously, it kind of relates back to Senator Peters' question about where this lives. If it's operating, it does not have that 15-year lifespan issue, but if it's capital, which is our intention, it would. And so this is just trying to say that there are infrastructure needs our arts and cultural organizations have that are intentionally, we still want them to have that 15-year lifespan, but they might not be major capital expenditures. A couple of organizations in my district that are renting, and they would like to be able to use this for movable capital investments that they might not have a 15-year lease, but if they do move, they would still be able to take these, capital investments with them when they go.
Was there a reason that a new facility was not included? If that group wanted to move and buy a facility instead of continuing to rent? I like if we're spending capital money that it goes to something that belongs to us.
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
Was there a reason you didn't include the possibility of buying a facility as opposed to moving and continuing to rent?
I understand. Erica, this doesn't exclude that.
Well, it needs to be used specifically for the expansion, renovation, or major repairs. So an expansion, but probably on the existing property. So if you needed to build additional space, that would cover expansion of renovation, major repairs, I think is pretty clear. But in terms of literally picking up and moving elsewhere, I don't read that it would be usable for that.
No, I didn't either. That's why I was asking if there was a reason that was excluded.
Not intentionally. Are you asking that you have organizations that would be interested in using this money to purchase a permanent home?
Yeah.
Okay, and you don't want that to be excluded? Mr. Chair, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I would like it to be included.
Yep. No, I think it's a good catch. I think it's a good catch.
That's going to bring it out of being eligible for capital funding. The expansion, renovation, major repairs is a very typical, almost boilerplate phrase that's used for capital-related projects.
I think they can use that. Can't you use acquisition?
Acquisition?
Yeah.
I think we've
right. Okay.
Yeah.
used it for acquisition from other funds in the past. Is that true, Senator Peters?
So I guess I'm still trying to figure out the interplay between the operating and the capital and the mandating of the capital versus using the operating for the capital, if that makes sense. We have in the past, yes,
Yeah,
Yes.
the Aging Schools program, for instance, is phrased the same way. There's at least a couple others that are phrased that way.
So would we be mandating the operating with this bill?
Yes.
No,
Okay, so we're not.
mandating the possibility of the 3 million being either one or the other, or a combination of the both, but no more than 3 million.
Well, you can't limit. The governor can always put in more than 3 million,
right,
but it would
of
be a
course.
minimum of 3 million.
Does that make sense, Senator?
I guess I go back, we can't mandate the capital budget, right?
Right.
So we can mandate the operating budget, and so, however we want to do it, I'm just trying to make sure we're not doing something that we can't do, so.
Yeah, I hear you.
So.
I don't sense a problem with this, but
Yeah,
I
mean,
trust your instincts.
If we want to mandate the operating, I'm all for it. I just want to make sure it's clean when it goes through.
I see what you're saying. So if the operating is not mandated, well, let's hold that thought for a second. Senator Zucker had a question. No? Yes, Senator?
Okay, thank you. Just curious, Erica, since you referenced aging schools, is that a operating mandate?
Yeah, it's phrased exactly the same way. The governor has an option to do it one way or another.
But it's considered a mandate when they score
Yeah,
the
if it doesn't,
mandates.
if the governor doesn't put it in the capital budget, then in either place, the chairman was exactly correct. Somewhere in the budget, $3 million would need to be provided.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Senator Young.
Did we agree to add acquisition, or?
I think it's a good addition, personally.
Okay. Add that to the uses in lines 19 through 20.
Yeah.
Senator Peters?
So to follow up on Senator Griffith's question, what has he done? What did he decide to do with aging schools?
I did not hear that question if it was directed at me.
What did the governor do when given the choice for aging schools?
He's fallen into it has happened in both places. I believe the trend these days for many, many years has been in capital, but there were times when it was brought in during the operating, but that was quite a while ago.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Elfreth?
Thank you. Double checking, we did the same thing when we increased the library capital program last year that's been mandated at $5 million for since 2008, and it's I just checked, it's phrased the same exact way.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bill. Thank you.
Senator Young.
The clause of waiving the 25%, is that typical? And I know we're doing it this year in the capital program, but is that typical otherwise? I mean, who decides what good cause is? I can't raise the money.
The match is 25%.
Yeah.
I might see if Matt can help answer that, since he deals with more of these kind of bond initiative things than I do in terms of a match. There's a variety of programs out there that require a match. 25% is not out of line.
What was the question again? It was whether 25% is a normal match?
Well, the bill says they can waive that for good cause.
Yep.
That seems to me like a pretty loose decision. They might say to one group might say, I can't raise it, and they say, okay, you don't have to, and another group says, well, I can't either, and they say, yeah, but we think you can.
Well, in other programs, good cause or that sort of waiver would be if the group had equity that they were putting in, maybe they had a lot of donated services provided towards the project that the administering agency was willing to count, but that didn't count towards the match. Maybe they own the real property, so they're gonna count the value of the equity in the real property. It's just a way to get past the need for an upfront cash match.
I thought most of those were acceptable in the capital program as it is, as part of a match.
Sometimes. Sometimes they're not, depending on how the property's owned. So there's times when we've had to go in the past to open up grants because there may be a lien on the property that prevented it from being counted using the value of the real property. Sometimes the donated services just don't count because the Department of General Services won't count them. And then sometimes they spent the money too soon. They got too excited about the project and they spent the money right as soon as they knew that they got the bond bill, but they spent it before June 1st of the year that they got the bond bill, and if you spend it before that date, it doesn't count towards you. So
I guess my last question then is, who makes the decision?
This is up to the State Arts Council. They manage this grant program.
Well, general services.
So it
Oh,
isn't.
bond bills, it would be general services. I believe in the bill here, this would be the state arts council standing in the place of general services.
Right, and to be clear, this is setting up its own program, that it's not necessarily beholden to any of the rules that exist for bond initiatives. This is its own standalone program.
Okay, I'm on the State Arts Council, and I certainly approve the idea. I just want some clarification there. Thank you.
Senator Stallings.
I was going to go that way, and I appreciate Senator Young getting that, but is there something already in place in the bond initiative that, because I know already there's been projects that people have been forgiven because of their bond initiative. Is there something in place we already have in that we could just say we can do that, the same thing with this, the same way? For the waive.
You mean not having a match?
I'm sorry?
You mean not having a match?
Yes, sir.
Well, I don't think we have a match this year. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
That's correct, and up to the sponsors, but I really don't think we should require a match if we're going to do it, because if you have all these grants, let's just say one's for $15,000, you got to go have somebody audit it, check it out, and the staff came to us and said, there's no way we're ever going to have time to do this, so we waived it. I mean, we got together this year and said, if we're going to give the money, let's give the money. And the whole match thing creates all kinds of administrative headaches. So I would be in favor of striking, 5, 1, and 2. Just give them the grant, and it's under $1 million. If it's up to the sponsors, I just find that it would be easier for you, for the group, to not have these little agents, nonprofits come in and try to do an appraisal on a piece of property so they can show that they have equity in the property. Just after a while, it costs the people that we're trying to help. So that's just my.
Senator Elfreth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would say I defer to the chair of the Capital Budget Subcommittee on this decision. We voted this bill out last year. It passed the Senate. It died in the House because of time. And the 25% match was the posture of the bill last year. So that's why we held it over. And we've changed kind of our culture of LBIs this year in reflection of the economy. We are talking about nonprofits that have been very hard hit, ones that are public and forward facing and have not been able to host any kind of revenue generating events. So I'm in favor of it if that's the will of the committee, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Senator Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Follow up to Senator Frederick. I think on line 19.3 where it says other infrastructure, I think he said add in there to purchase. Is there anything in there that says you're allowed to construct new? And I bring that up because in one case, an arts council itself has been donated a building that really has to be torn down. So on lots, they might want to build a new arts council building on it. So I don't see where this says anything about being able to construct or construct new.
So that's fine. As far as I'm concerned, we've got a bill before us. I see two sets of amendments. The one will say acquisition or construction added into this. Fine point. And the other is to remove the 25% match. Okay. Senator Young? No. Okay. Okay, so we've got moves in a second on the amendment. The package of amendments. The amendments that were already in the bill, plus the ones we just added. Senator McCray.
Only because you were dealing with co-sponsors already, I was going to ask if I could be added to that amendment that adds you as a co-sponsor.
Anybody who wants to be a co-sponsor, raise your hand.
So herein lies the challenge of doing this from Zoom is I can't see you guys, so I'm hoping Matt or Kim can keep a list of who those are who want to be added onto.
Senator Peters, Senator Young, Senator Zucker, Senator Roosevelt, myself, Senator King, Senator McCray.
Okay, I heard all of that, thank you.
All right, so all in favor of the revised amendments package, raise your hand. Unanimous. Now on the bill. All those in favor, raise your hand. We got everybody again. Another happy winner. All right, let's get going here. I want to get out of here by well, certainly before 2 hours worth of this. So let's get this going. Senator Edwards, 447. Historic Revitalization Tax Credit.
Senate Bill 447 deals with the Historic Revitalization Tax Credit. It's changing around definitions, but what it's really doing is allowing the credit to be claimed for properties that are owned by the Department of Natural Resources and on their land. I think there's just a few properties. The fiscal note reflects the fact that this isn't going to be broadly used. They have a curatorship program, is what I think the department called it, where citizens live in historic homes on their properties, and this will allow them to rehabilitate those properties and take advantage of the historic tax credit. The fiscal impact is $70,000 on a tax year basis, and the program terminates after tax year 2025, so it's rather limited in its fiscal impact.
All those in favor, raise your hand. Everyone's here. Senator McCray stepped out, so we'll have to get back on that maybe. 529.
Senate Bill 529 is an Anne Arundel County hotel tax dealing with the distribution of revenue. This bill requires the city of Annapolis to allocate 3% of the hotel tax revenues for the Annapolis Art and Public Places Commission.
Do we have a letter?
There's a letter, and there's one technical amendment that adds in, that says what date a report's due. It'll be due on November 1st each year.
So that's for the amendment. Everybody in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. Everybody, McCray is still out of the room. He can add it. Okay, this is on the bill as amended. All those in favor, hands up. All right, same deal. $533, horse racing.
Senate Bill 533 is the horse racing bill. The bill increases the number of members on the Maryland Bred Race Fund Advisory Committee from 5 to 6, and to include a member recommended by the Maryland Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association. In addition, you should have an amendment in front of you that the sponsor is proposing, and this would alter registration of a Maryland Thoroughbred horse if the horse's dam dies, is permanently retired, or is certified by a veterinarian to be unable to breed.
I approve the sponsor of the bill.
Is there a second? And I'll explain that more if you want. So the amendment bred is truly Maryland bred, and so there are things that happen, and I, you know, to be honest, the horse dies, it's complicated, but they've determined that in these rare circumstances, this to ensure that the horses that we're defining as Maryland bred are actually Maryland bred. That's all the amendment does. Okay, on the amendment, hands. Okay, good. On the bill as amended. Okay, Senator McCray, you want to catch up? So you missed, I think, two others. I think they were both unanimous. Would you like to be recorded in the favorable? Very good. And I think that's it, because we're going to just, we will not be voting on the 575 since we've already dispensed with the issue. Okay, outstanding. All right, thank you all.